Stories help us define what we believe to be possible. And we're always telling stories. It's one of my favorite things about humans. And you might think, I'm not a storyteller. That's not entirely true, I bet. When someone says, how are you? That's a prompt for you to answer with a story. Sometimes the story is as simple as, I'm okay. How are you? Sometimes it's a little more involved, depending on who you are and who's asking. I, by the way, am all right, I guess. I'm a little nervous trying to take up space, trying to talk to you through this collection of shiny rocks. But overall, I'm doing all right. But going back to where I started this time, stories decorate the fringes of reality with possibility. I had a conversation recently because I created a world for a book that I was writing at the time. This book, the main conflict in it was gravity pausing for 2 seconds. And the book didn't ask how would things fall apart or why would things fall apart. It asked a very different question. And that question is, what would it take for things to not fall apart? I did later write a dystopian answer to that question, the gravity of apocalypse, which I'm considering sharing. But as I was describing the society where emotional intelligence was the default and systems were designed to support people rather than extract from them, my friend asked me, if we do manage to live in a world like this, if we do bring our society to something resembling a utopia, then how will we know the lessons we learned today? How will we know the pain of despair, of loss, of travesty? How will we know how to avoid tragic outcomes? How will we know what's bad if everything is good? My answer, as you might expect, was stories. We tell stories. Great example of the stories we tell would be the Holocaust. I don't have to live through that myself. I don't have to inspire a new one. Other people are trying their best to do so, but I don't have to do that personally because I'm in the privileged place in history to live after the fact, to look back and to be able to read and to share stories about why it happened and why it shouldn't happen again. And since stories have this much power over the way we relate to each other and to ourselves, they show you through examples what is possible and how things would play out. They contain our expression of what is possible. In other words, stories help determine what we believe to be possible. And so it should be no surprise to anyone listening to this at this point that the future seems grim, seems uncertain. It seems as if collapse is inevitable, as if we're simply waiting for things to fall apart, surviving in the meantime without a sense of why. And while that's a valid response to the events unfolding, think about how it's influenced by the stories we tell. Might not be much of a stretch of imagination, but imagine growing up in a world where every story you hear, whether it's the news, your next favorite fantasy, sci-fi in particular, where every time something good happens, it's temporary, it's fragile, it is inevitably uncovered to be bad or broken. The science fiction genre is especially bad about this. I only have to say 2 letters to bring to mind a good example: AI. The stories that humanity has told and shared at a large scale about artificial intelligence has primed us to believe that it is inevitably a bad thing. And right now it's not great. The way that business people are making it is not ideal. Making a lot of dumb decisions and not making a good product, generally. But everyone I talked to, as I was developing this world for the Gravity series, a world where AI has successfully integrated into the daily ongoings of life without replacing human agency, people told me time and time again that that was unrealistic. And it made me wonder, why is the alternative more realistic? Why is collapse considered inevitable? And I think it's because we've been trained to believe it, been trained to see it that way in every story that we're told. And when someone tries to tell a different story, it's questioned. Take, for example, the current titans of the video game industry, the stories that they tell. They have entire media empires built on a single premise, and that premise tends to take the form of, what is it like to survive when things inevitably fall apart? And when you see that story unfold again and again everywhere you look, and the answer that the storytellers give you is basically, at best, hope is a comfort that you must fight for, that you must suffer for. And ultimately, hope is unrealistic. At best, you'll get some of what you hope for. And so if what I'm saying has any truth to it, stories help define what we believe to be possible, and through the repetition of that theme, the idea that hope is ignorant, that collapse is inevitable, we start to believe it to be true. And we start to think that perhaps there is no reason to hope, that positive change is somehow impractical, somehow unrealistic. But it happens all the time, maybe even today as you're watching this. So when I say stories help us to define what is possible, and I show you very vaguely these examples of collapse, what are we to do about it? The answer sounds simple. It's to think and to grow and to tell other possibilities. But in practice, there's a reason it hasn't happened yet. And I think those reasons are fair. If you don't tell a story that's like the other stories, then people are going to think about them a certain way. And that way may not be favorable. If someone has built their worldview on certain facts that they consider to be undeniable, and one of those is challenged, they have two options: to accommodate the challenge or to reject it. More often than not, due to survival instinct, I think, people are going to reject what is misaligned. And so in the context of capitalist survival, misalignment is not an ideal outcome. But I would argue that misalignment already exists. It may be intoxicating to watch tragedy unfold, to have a reminder of your own humanity in dire circumstances, to have your assumptions that collapse is inevitable reaffirmed by some new shiny thing. But I, for one, think that there is a yearning for something else, a yearning that's yet to be defined, for something else that's yet to be defined. And I also believe it already exists. And I think we need more of that. More stories that show that collapse is conditional. It's an option, not the end state. That power does not inherently corrupt. That humanity is necessary for evolution. And I think that with time and patience and accessibility, the stories we use to define what is possible can also evolve. The stories I write aim to do that very thing. From the Gravity series that shows, one, how easy dystopian thinking is. It's the easiest genre to write, in my opinion. But two, shows you what a different paradigm is like by asking the question, what does it take to survive the unthinkable? Not just to survive, I suppose, but to thrive together. And we're seeing things, maybe not in the same style as gravity pausing, but with the same level of disruption happening almost daily. And if we rely on the stories that have been told and shared to the widest audience, we're going to believe that collapse is inevitable, and we're going to lose hope. But if any of that made sense, if any of that left you wondering, what is there to read? My other series might be a good option for you. It's called The Multiverse of Aether. And it takes high fantasy aesthetic and shows how normal people, relatively, they have magic, but normal people can use kindness and empathy and awareness and trust and clarity to overcome not only self-doubt and interpersonal frustration, but systemic cruelty and even primordial dissonance itself. It's a story about recognizing that you are not what you were given. You are using the scripts you inherited to navigate a world they no longer fit in, and showing how to train yourself otherwise. So I'm doing what I can to lead us to believe that other things are possible, that collapse is not inevitable. And I know others are too. I just live in a bit of a hole by myself for the most part. So I can't give you examples right now, but I can at least give you the work I've been doing. And as part of that work, I'm making all of this free to you. You can find it for free on my Patreon at patreon.com/Darian Thomas. It'll be spelled in my face and in the description. But yeah, people are waiting for GTA 6 and Fallout 5 and the next Elder Scrolls games. I really don't see any of those catering to the possibilities that do exist. But if my meandering has brought anything new to you, I'd love to hear about it. Because I have no idea. I have a lot of thoughts, and I want to share them, but I don't know what's valuable, because it's how I see the world. But how we see the world is different from each other. We each have a beautiful and unique lens through which we interpret our environment and ourselves. So I guess if I were to say anything, it would be I appreciate you. I wish you the best of luck with finding hope, and I thank you for existing.